carried, just as the Bible says, on 2 golden poles. And above it, winged cherubim, exactly like the cherubim in the Bible.
According to the Bible, the Ark of the Covenant was crowned with 2 winged creatures known as cherubim.
And every single pillar down this corridor, every one of them, has this representation of 2 winged creatures, exactly like the cherubim on top of the Ark of the Covenant.
Sanders acknowledges that such images are not uncommon in Egyptian antiquity, but the sheer quantity of the symbols at Medinet Habu sent a special message.
There's one here, one over there, further down, extra ones. This whole chamber seems to somehow be dedicated and representing where Ramesses III obtained his treasure and obtained the ability to build probably the most magnificent temple in all of Egypt.
But Medinet Habu was built during the final years of Ramesses' reign. The looting of Jerusalem had taken place much earlier, so the holy stones are unlikely to be buried here. Convinced that he has evidence of who took the Ark and a record of its capture, Sanders now needs to identify a temple site that matches the plunder of Jerusalem. Once again, the ancient records are scoured for fresh clues. Written by his sons, the so-called Harris Papyrus is a journal of Ramesses III's achievements, his triumphs in battle, and his great works at home. Amid the heroic narrative, one anomaly had gone almost unnoticed.
What stood out to me was the fact that Ramesses III had built a temple outside of Egypt, which is not a normal occurrence for the Egyptian kings, in a place called Vahi Pakanan.
And there was another clue. The papyrus reveals that this unusual temple was built by Ramesses III at the site where he had received a consignment of treasure, or tribute, from the Kingdom of Judah.
For the Egyptian king to build a temple outside of his domain, purposefully just to receive the tribute, it must have been a massive tribute.
And according to Sanders, the most likely source for this massive tribute was the greatest treasure described in the Bible, the wealth of Solomon's temple and the Ark of the Covenant. With the candidate for the temple identified, Sanders needed to find the modern location of the temple at Jahi Pekanan.
Very simply, I had asked my wife to go to the Times Atlas of the World, look in the index, and see if there was any Zahi, D-J-A-H-I, anywhere in the index. And she comes back to me and she says, well, there is a Zahariah that looks similar, D-J-A-H-I. Will that do? I said to her, well, absolutely, let's find out where this place is. At which point, amazingly, my hairs at the back of my head jumped up, because Zahariah on the Atlas was at exactly the spot where an Egyptian king would stop his armies if he were marching from Egypt to Jerusalem.
Zahariah was a natural place for an army to halt and regroup. Ahead, the terrain changed dramatically from flat desert to high hill passes and narrow valleys, where an invading force would be vulnerable. Garrisoned here, it would also be the logical place for them to build a temple. If Sanders' hunch is right, the ancient temple built by Ramesses III and mentioned in the Harris Papyrus should be located in the village of Zahariah in modern Israel.
If the temple is there, the foundation deposits of the temple would still be there, and the stones may very well be found in the temple deposits in that village.
But the battles of the Holy Land do not just belong to Bible history. Zahariah Zaharia is situated on the Middle East's most active political fault line, the West Bank. This particular area has only recently been handed over by Israel to the Palestinian Authority. Satisfying biblical curiosity is not high on Zaharia's priorities. Sanders has teamed up with Israeli guide Avner Peled to negotiate the political minefield of present-day Zaharia.
There's the sign to Zaharia, look, on the right. This is the road the Egyptians would have taken. They would have walked up this road and they come across these hills for the first time having come out of the desert.
שלום, בוקר טוב. הכביש לדהריה, זה מפה, יש בעיה לנסוע לשם?
לא, אבל בדהריה אני לא יודע מה יהיה.
בדהריה אתה לא יודע מה יהיה.
לא.
You don't know what's going to happen in Daria.
Why is there a checkpoint here?
It's just...
This is the border. This is the border between us and the Palestinian area.
This bit here to the north is Palestinian.
We still have the authorities.
The military authorities?
Yes.
Can we take that road?
You can.
Yeah,
but
but you say that you don't know what, if something can happen or not. We're in Israeli cars. I don't feel safe enough, Mike. You are my guest here, and it's quite dangerous. For me as Israeli, it would be better to take the bypass road.
Sanders is disappointed. Avner has decided that it's not safe for them to travel on to Zaharia because his car has Israeli number plates. The security situation is volatile. Their very presence could provoke a riot. A change of car, a change of guide. Sanders is back on his way to Zaharia, but this time with an Arab companion, Sami Arkoub, from the Palestinian Ministry of Antiquities and Archaeology. The ministry have given permission for Sanders to carry out a preliminary survey in Zaharia, but they can't guarantee his safety while he's there.
The children still stone cars. We hope they won't stone us. But in any adventure, there's some danger, and one has to face that. This is much too important a quest to worry about any dangers that might be there.
We are just in the entrance of the
Oh yes, look, there's the sign.
The site on the
Here we
right
are,
side.
after all this time.
I think we have to look for the center of the old town.
And you know where that is?
Yes, sure.
Because how many people live here now?
It's about 18,000 people, that's all.
It's a bustling little town.
There's a good market here for the Bedouins who are coming from the south.
Yes.
They began to...
Everybody comes from the desert. The first place they come to is Zaharia.
That's right.
So that hasn't changed in 3,000 years.
In fact, a lot has changed. The village of history is now a modern town. Development may well have smothered the foundations of a ruined temple here.
We are going up.
If Ramesses III really was Shishak, if his temple was here, and if it did hide the stones from the Ark of the Covenant, the proof after all these years may be buried too deep for Sanders to discover.
I think that's all we can't to the car. We can put the car here. Okay.
I'm speechless.
As Sanders explores the area, his conviction grows that Zaharia was a logical place for the Egyptians to build a temple.
So the Egyptian army would come from the south here, build this temple, and it overlooked the whole of the Hebron Hills, as far as the eye can see. Wonderful place to put a temple.
But there's also evidence for Sanders' theory. Some of the building stones stand out from the others.
It's holes.
Yes.
Here, look at how nicely squared off that is. There's one over there with holes. There's one here with holes. And then there's all this other rubbish. Look at this.
different
very nice.
pieces.
Look, finish, the finish on here.
Yes.
It's perfectly shaped, perfectly straight on the edges against, look at all this other stuff that they built ordinary fortresses with. I mean, this is what they used to build fortresses. They spent a lot of time and effort in cutting that stone. You don't spend a lot of time and effort cutting stones for these hovels or for fortresses. This is being taken from a very, very nice building. There was a special building here.
Everywhere Sanders looks, he finds the random remnants of an older and more carefully constructed building.
I mean, this lintel, for example, is obviously much older, was cut a lot earlier, and was broken before it was actually put into place. Rats.
Yes.
Massive rats. Look, you can see.
Yeah,
this is relief work.
Yes.
Somebody's carved this there, and there's one there.
The unusual decorations and well-cut blocks of stone scattered amongst the ruins convinced Sanders that a grander, more impressive building once stood here.
I don't think we can yet say that any of the stones are Egyptian, but they're certainly older than this building.
When he came to Dhaharia, Sanders' main worry was that there'd be nothing left of any ancient buildings. Now he finds he has the opposite problem. With a plethora of ruins, how will he ever find the foundations of one ancient Egyptian temple beneath so much rubble? Jerusalem is the center for archaeological research in the Holy Land. Here, if anywhere, Sanders will find the information that might help him narrow his search for the temple. In the turmoil of recent years, more stones have been thrown than excavated in the area around Dhaharia. But when Sanders researched the records, he found that archaeologists had once been busy there. More than 160 years ago, a Victorian explorer, Edward Robinson, traveled through Dhaharia and described seeing the ruin of an ancient fortress-like tower. Sanders hadn't seen any such ruin on his visit to the town, but could Robinson have seen the remains of Ramesses' ancient temple? The tower was described as having one distinctive feature. In its lower courses was a huge, well-cut, 9-foot stone.
In 1838, and hoping that your expertise...
At the Hebrew University, Sanders enlists Professor Benjamin Kedder to narrow down the search for the temple ruins.
All I can say is that the oldest photograph shows you exactly where the village was 80 years ago. But what interests you, of course, is a view of the high part of that village,
yes,
which is here. The likely place of the castle, the ruins of which Robinson saw and the survey mentions, and I'd say that should be looked for here in this area.
A map, a dream, and the clue of a 9-foot block of stone. Together, tomorrow, they could lead Sanders to the stones on which the 10 Commandments were inscribed. Sanders has returned to Dhaharia, aiming to locate the distinctive 9-foot stone, which he believes will be the clue to finding the ancient Egyptian temple of Ramesses III. Finding one stone in a large town isn't easy, but after asking several locals if they know of its location, at last he finds someone who does.
Perhaps he would know where that 9-foot-long stone is. We want to know where the biggest stone of all the villages.
هو بيسألك وين في هان في المبنى هذا القديم أو في البلدة القديمة أكبر حجار، الأحجار الكبيرة اللي تقريبا طولها 3 متر.
اسمها الحسن.
الحسن؟ وين هي الحسن؟
هذه هان جنب الصحراء.
طب شو يعني الحسن؟ شو يعني؟
هذه زي كنيسة قديمة يعني.
I want to translate now. He's talking that he thinks that it will be in the Hassan. Hassan means in English fortifications. He says a number. It's about 3,000
years ago.